From Hollywood, it's time now for Edmund O'Brien as...
Johnny Dollar.
Lieutenant Arneson, Dollar. You can come down anytime you want to. I'm still at the hospital.
Thanks, Lieutenant. How's the driver?
He's not going to live either. The doctors doubt they can bring him around for a statement.
Oh? What about the loss? Has the amount been figured out yet?
Pretty close, almost $250,000.
I don't suppose there's a chance, but was any of it marked or listed by serial number?
Very little of it. You'd better come down. If the driver does regain consciousness, we may get something. If he doesn't, we'll be starting pretty much in the dark.
I guess both of us have done that before. All right, Lieutenant Anderson. I'll be right down.
Edmund O'Brien in another adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense.
Well, that finishes that. This is Mr. Dollar, Sergeant Cole.
How are you?
Sergeant Cole.
Dollar's investigating for the insurance company.
Yeah, but they're hurting, huh?
I've seen them in better moods. Were you planning on talking to the widow tonight, Lieutenant? Follow up the possibility that he knew the killers?
What kind of condition is she in, Cole?
Hard to tell. She seemed to be standing up all right.
I'd just as soon leave it to you tonight, Dollar. Cole and I ought to get back to headquarters and see what we've pulled in.
Sure, Lieutenant. Anything you say. A short time later, a white-sheeted figure was rolled out of the Biller room, followed in a couple of minutes by Mrs. Biller, a plain, lumpy woman in her 40s. In silence, she followed me into an empty waiting room a few yards down the corridor.
I want to go home. I've been here all day and I'm tired.
I can certainly understand that, Mrs. Biller, and I won't keep you long. This may seem like a strange question under the circumstances, but do you think there could have been anything personal connected with your husband's death?
Personal?
We're looking for a valid reason for Mr. Biller and the other men being shot down the way they were.
What are you talking about? Why wouldn't he get shot? It didn't surprise me. He was always with a lot of money, and I told him he'd get shot someday.
There was no apparent reason, Mrs. Biller. They weren't given time to try to protect the money. They didn't draw their guns. Private guards work under orders to surrender as a rule, but they weren't given a chance. They were met on the sidewalk and killed without a word.
I haven't been thinking about anything like that all day long. I've been wondering what would happen if he died. Now he has. And here I am with the house still not paid for and no money. I just have to face it. He's dead, and that's all there is to it.
You'd want to help find the man who killed him if you could, wouldn't you?
How could I help you do that?
He and the other man could have been killed because they knew the man who killed them.
How could anything like that be? Why should Carl know anybody like that?
We don't know that he did. We only wonder.
And I read the papers. How could he know anybody when they were all wearing masks?
That could mean that he knew them very well. Well enough to recognize them in spite of the masks. Don't you see what I mean, Mrs. Biller?
I can't think. You couldn't expect me to think after a day like this has been. I don't know what to say. I'm all mixed up now.
I understand, Mrs. Biller. I won't bother you any more tonight. What we want to know is if somebody who knew your husband and knew quite a lot about his job could have been responsible for his death and the robbery. We'll talk to you about it again. Maybe tomorrow. Lieutenant Arneson thought enough of the interview and the widow's reaction to assign a couple of men to keep her covered. The police spent most of that night pulling in known and suspected criminals and grilling them without any definite success. The next morning, I was in the lieutenant's office while he was waiting for one of his informers to be brought in.
Nothing on the missing cars yet, Dollar, but I'm dead certain they haven't got out of town. We had it sewed up in a hurry. I put another man on a biller angle, too.